This is the Our Zen Post of the Week podcast, unedited and unrefined, where we talk about a Zen Reddit post of academic or practical interest, except this time we're not going to do that because this is the Wumenguan series. There are about 1,000 years of Zen historical records from China, created by Zen masters in the Zen tradition. We're going to be talking about the most famous Zen book of all Zen books, Wumen's Checkpoint, Case 2. It's really long, so I don't think you want to read the whole thing. Maybe you want to read the whole thing. I don't think you want to read the whole thing. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what part of this case catches your eye?
Okay, so I'm Astro, and I think just to sum the case up really quickly, okay. So to sum up the case, so there was this guy at the end of Bayang's lecture that was an old monk, and he told Bayang that he used to be a monk in the place where Bayang was teaching, but then someone asked him a question, which was something or other about falling into casualty, and then he turned into a fox. And I should really read this. It's not that long. I'll read it. I'll make it snappy. Okay. Every time Bayang thought there was an old man who followed along with the congregation to hear the Dharma and left when the congregation withdrew. Unexpectedly, one day he stayed behind. So Bayang asked him, "Who is the one who stands before me?" The old man said, "I am not human. In time of the ancient Buddha Kashyapa, when I was dwelling here on this mountain, a student asked me if a person of great practice still falls into cause and effect or not. I replied that he does not fall into cause and effect, and consequently, I have had 500 birds in the body of a wild fox. Now I am asking you, Master, to turn a word on my behalf so that I can escape from being a wild fox." Then he asked Baiyang, "Does a person of great practice still fall into cause and effect or not?" Baiyang said, "He is not deluded about cause and effect." At these words, the old man was greatly enlightened. He bowed in homage and said, "I have already shed the fox body, which rests on the other side of the mountain. Please, master, give it the funeral services due a dead monk." Um, yeah, I think that's the important part of the case, right? Oh, I lost my co-host. Okay, I'll keep reading. Bayang ordered the duty distributor to pound the gavel to summon the assembly and announce to them, "After we eat, we shall hold a funeral for a dead monk." The congregation were puzzled and began to discuss the matter among themselves. They went to the infirmary, but there was no one there sick. They wondered why Bayang was acting like this. No, that's mine. After their meal, Bayang led the congregation to a cliffside on the other side of the mountain, where he took a stick and pulled out the body of a dead fox from a crevice in the rocks. They then formally cremated the body. That night, Bayang went up to the teaching hall and related the full story of what had happened. Huangbo then asked, "One wrong reply, and this man of old fell into a wild fox's spirit for 500 lifetimes. If each and every reply is right, then what?" Bayang said, "Come here and tell him." Huangbo then came up and gave Bayang a slap. Bayang clapped his hands and laughed and said, "I knew barbarians' beards were red, and here's another red bearded barbarian." Okay, you're back. Okay, so one thing that I was thinking today in the morning while thinking that this was going to be the case we were going to talk about is I wanted to ask you if you thought this case has a parallel in the Western discussion of free will and what's the other thing? I forgot. Start with a D.
Destiny?
No. it's close. Determinism.
Oh.
Because I remember when I was studying philosophy that whenever that subject would come up, I always got really bored because it didn't seem to me like like the answer really mattered. Like if the universe is entirely deterministic or we have free will, like what I'm going to do today or tomorrow is not going to change. So it always seemed to me like a weird thing to be worried about. So I don't know. Do you think there's a relation here, or well, I guess my question is, I don't know what the difference would be
between determinism and
Be, between this case talking about falling into cause and effect and not ignoring cause and effect, and determinism and free will.
the debate is about whether or not Zen masters are subject to cause and effect. And the answer within Zen teachings is no, they are not subject to cause and effect. The problem is that, first of all, Buddhism is based on the idea that we are all subject to cause and effect. So that puts Zen and Buddhism at odds. Secondly, the problem is that people see the world in terms of cause and effect, so they don't understand how Zen masters cannot be bound by cause and effect. And third, not being bound by cause and effect means that you can act spontaneously appropriate, whereas everyone else is acting however the situation, or the history of the situation compels them to act. So the question then for Western philosophy goes back to the face that only a mother could love, Oedipus, right? No, it's not my joke. It's somebody else's joke. But so Oedipus, the king, the prophecy is your son's going to kill you, right? And the king does all these things to avoid the prophecy, and then the son kills him anyway. Now, we could argue that it was determinism that was being explained there, right? It was going to happen. You were told it was going to happen. You can't get out of it. It happens anyway. But the other argument there is that the king had a genetic anger management problem, and his son was going to have a genetic anger management problem too, and that conflict inherently would come back to haunt him. That's not determinism as much as it's the pattern of human behavior is such that, if you keep hitting your finger with a hammer, it's going to keep hurting, right? Which is cause and effect, right? You're hitting your finger and it hurts, and you do it again and it hurts. It's cause and effect. But so cause and effect is different than determinism, but they can look the same. And at the same time all this is happening, Zen masters are like, yeah, but that doesn't apply to us. And Buddhists are very angry that it doesn't apply to them, and then fist fights break out in tea shops. So the question is, like, why does it not apply to them? Or the question is, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's too advanced for what my question is, I think, because I think I got lost. I'm getting lost in what is even meant by being subject to cause and effect. Like, okay, so you have the hammer thing, right? If you hit your hand with the hammer, it hurts. So that's cause and effect.
Sure.
And
the effect is your finger hurts. The cause is you hit it with a hammer.
But what the argument being made here is not that if a Zen master hits his hammer with what?
Finger.
Yeah, if he hits a hammer with his finger, that his finger is not going to hurt, right? That's not the argument. So what, in terms of the hammer and the finger, what's the argument being made?
Oh, The argument is that there's no hammer and there's no finger.
Is that the argument being made?
Okay, so the fox monk says, I answered a question not based on my personal experience, but citing the personal experience of other people which I had not verified. For this crime, I was forced into the rebirth, 500 rebirths as a fox, as a person who deceives other people, right? Because he's got a fox body, but he's appearing at the lectures as a human Jedi ghost. I mean, it's a really great story. Because he answered the question inappropriately, he was cursed. And he says to Bai Zhang, fix it for me, you know? And Bai Zhang fixes it for him without changing the answer. How is that possible? Was it the answer that got him in trouble? Right. And that's what Huangbo is going to roll in later and point out. I mean, if you'd given the wrong answer, would you be in Fox time right now? And so the idea, the cause answering inappropriately, the effect, the curse. Zen masters aren't subject to that rule. They aren't cursed for answering inappropriately. Everything they do is appropriate. They're not bound by the law of causality. Now you could say, okay, what? So one, because they can't be inappropriate. Two, there's no effect. So they're not bound by the law of causality, but there's still a law. Or you could say, because they do not think of things as inherently causal in nature, their actions are not prompted by any previous cause. Therefore, they are not an effect in anything that they say or do. So there's another problem there. I mean, this is not a simple hammer finger situation. The hammer, all causes, do not apply to Zen masters. And the finger, all effects, likewise do not apply to all Zen masters. So they break the law of causality on both sides. It's not just one or the other, right? If you drop a rock, it falls. There's two sides to this, right? The fact that the cause that the effect is inevitable because of the rules, or the side that the rock being where it is inevitable because of its karma or nature or inability to be enlightened. But either way, I mean, now it's just like 4 metaphors in and you're still giving me the funny face. Okay, so I'll rewind a little. The cause of hitting the finger with the hammer does not apply to Zen masters, right? Because they never miss with the hammer. They always hit what they intend to hit. The effect of having your finger be hit depends upon rules that apply equally to everyone. But the rules do not apply to Zen masters, so their finger never gets hurt. So they're not compelled to act in that they can't make a mistake in violation of the rule that everything is caused, and they are not subject to effects in the normal way. So that side of the equation is also null. Or cause and effect is actually just an expedient way of describing things. It's not inherently true. And so Zen masters can go around saying that they're immune to cause and effect because they know that cause and effect is just a fairy tale. It's not inherently real. So, of course, they're not subject to it because no one is. It's a fairy tale.
Okay, that one was the best one. I still have questions, but okay. it doesn't make sense to me that there is no cause and effect. And I think so that I dislike I know you put the face my cat does when he's ready to pounce on something, like he's gonna get it. But okay, just so the reason I was confused with the first thing you said is because, to me, saying, that, oh, the hammer doesn't hit, I mean, the hammer doesn't make the finger hurt, because in reality the hammer doesn't exist and the finger doesn't exist. That doesn't make any sense. Like, to me, that just sounds like moving words around, and like, okay, I get what the words mean, but
all hammers are causes. All hurt fingers are effects.
Yeah, okay.
One. But you cannot cause a Zen master. Zen masters can't make people into Zen masters, and people cannot make Zen masters do things. So the hammer, which is all causes, does not apply to Zen masters. They can neither create Zen masters, nor can Zen masters be compelled by anything.
Okay, yeah, I get that.
So
okay.
The hammer doesn't exist. The finger is all causes, right? Zen masters respond to conditions as they arise. They are not responding to the karma history that forces each moment to follow another moment. So you get what appears to be spontaneous or random stuff from Zen masters because they're not bound by all of the causes, all of the effects / fingers that have preceded them. So they are also immune to all effects and fingers.
Okay, so I think that makes more sense to me, because, and I think you're gonna say I'm still wrong. The way I'm understanding that is, well, we're not talking about like if I drop my thermos off of the table, it's gonna fall. We're not talking about that kind of cause and effect, are we? We're talking about the cause and effect of enlightenment. That's what you're saying?
Well, we're also talking about the cause and effect of human choice, identity, preference, all the ways that, the physics of cause and effect are very different from the philosophical conversation about cause and effect, right? The idea that you make choices because of your experience and knowledge.
Okay. I got it. Okay, perfect. Yes. Okay, you got it. You. Okay. Well, I think that was it. I think we can move on to the commentary. Yes.
So I just wanted to read this really quick because there's a huge amount of debate about this. So I think that you were reading J.C. Cleary, and he says, Baizhang says he is not deluded by cause and effect. Then I have Blythe, who says no one can set aside the law of cause and effect. Then I have Thomas Cleary, who says they are not blind to causality. And then I have Reps, who says the enlightened man is one with the law of causation. So, right, when it comes to translating, everybody agrees about everything up to that moment. And then the 4 best translators that I've found, not one of them can agree. Like, they get close to each other. 2 of the 4 are pretty close. Like the brothers, ironically, the brothers are not blind to and not deluded about. So, but not the same. Not an equivalent translation at all, but more similar than other ones. And those are frickin' brothers. So that the importance of this case in terms of translation hinges on dealing with that answer, right? And I don't think you can do it outside the context of what Huangbo is going to bring up later on. But go ahead now. So go ahead and we can move on to Wumen's commentary.
Great. Woman said, when the wild fox monk asserted that the person of great practice does not fall into cause and effect, why did he fall into a wild fox's body? When he heard that such a person is not deluded by cause and effect, why did he shed the fox's body? If you can focus the eye of enlightened insight here on this, then you will know why. Long ago, on Bayang Mountain, the old man won for himself 500 lifetimes flowing with the wind.
Yeah, that last sentence is sticking point number 2 in translation problems. Long ago on the mountain, why the old man won for himself? Because Baizhang's name is also the name of the mountain, and so there's a lot of confusion when it comes to translating that sentence. Are we talking about the old man that lived on the mountain or the man whose name is the same as the mountain, right? But I think J.C. Cleary has done it correctly here. So the important point here is, right, Wumen is reiterating the problem with the case. Why was the fox monk punished for this statement? And then, why was he freed by the other statement? So there's 2 problems. Okay, now the poem.
Verse, not falling into, not being deluded by, 2 faces of a single die, not being deluded by, not falling into, 1,000,000 errors.
I'm just reading them all to myself because I'm such a fan.
I think about the question you threw out there of why did the fox get liberated by hearing that answer? I think the way I think about it, and it's funny because women's cases have like knack for making it really hard for me to connect them to other things that have already been said in the Zen tradition. Like, I think, I don't know why, but I don't know if it's the framing or what, but something about his cases make it really hard for me to go to, I don't know, check Book of Serenity or Fayan or the Foyan or whatever and be like, okay, here's another take on this. But it seems to me like the way you framed it with the Fox guy being giving an answer that's being given because of its, I don't know, perceived doctrinal validity instead of because of how it instead of giving an answer that is informed by his experience. I don't know. I think the only thing that sort of makes sense with that lens is that by seeing Bayang giving an answer that is not with the same doctrinal weight or whatever, he's seeing someone answering in terms of themselves. or their experience or whatever. But the other part is, I think, and that's why I asked about the determinism versus free will, because the way I was thinking about it is, I I get the feeling talking with people in the forum about um, their circumstances and all of the things that they consider difficult or hard about their lives or whatever, that they feel trapped by those circumstances and by the place they chanced uh, upon just by virtue of their birth. And it, I think the I think it feels like what they have in their minds is that there are either these people that are trapped by their circumstances and Zen masters, which are like, I don't know, totally beyond circumstances and things like that. And I think the answer of Bai Yang, which is they don't ignore or they are not oblivious or whatever the translation is, they're not ignoring the circumstances. I think it's pointing to the fact that it's not just that it's not that in order to be like the Zen masters, you have to pretend like your circumstances don't exist or like the circumstances of the world don't exist. And the way I read the Zen masters, and we can discuss this, is I think Zen masters are people who are not trapped by circumstances, but rather are liberated in in any circumstance.
The greatest living science fiction writer has a book called Peripheral, and in the book, the main character is a young woman who is great at video games, and she helps other people in video games, and then she gets a job working for a rich guy who has his own private video game army, and he goes up against another rich guy who has his own private video game army, and their two armies will fight. And at one point, the enemy rich guy has killed off all the people in her platoon and is chasing her into a forest in a World War II video game. And the hero's brother comes in and is watching her try to escape. And he says to her, you got to see it the other way. And you're not running away from him. You're leading him into a trap. And she's like, I don't understand that. He said, just keep playing. So she's playing, and it's hour after hour of this cat and mouse game. And he gives her pills to help her stay awake because he's ex-military. So he gives her pills to stay awake. He's like, you just got to keep going until you see it. And she just keeps playing and keeps playing. And then she figures it out. She realizes that every step that she's taking, she's getting the bad guy to follow her. She's controlling his choices because he can't stop following. And then she sets up the ambush and she kills him. And so the idea that circumstances exist is the problem. You think circumstances exist. Everybody thinks circumstances exist. And things exist, but not circumstances. Right? The whole world got really excited when it became common knowledge that we're all on a giant rock that's spinning around an huge flaming nuclear menace. We don't feel like we're on a giant rock spinning anywhere. The world does not appear to be moving at all. The circumstances of our existence are circumstances in which we have to like propel ourselves. We're not swooshing around on a rock in space. But it's all just circumstances. Like the idea that we're moving on a rock, but not moving in our houses, it's just circumstances, and none of them are any more real than any other circumstances. So when you say they're free in circumstances, it's like, well, I mean, you know, but there's no real circumstances. There's lots of examples of people who think they have solved a problem, people coming up against insoluble problems because of the parameters. And then the parameters turn out to be just the perspective they have. And you change the parameters and all of a sudden the solution is obvious, right? And that happens over and over again in human history because every set of parameters, which you call circumstances, is arbitrary. You just picked ones that you liked, but you could pick different ones. And that happens over and over again. So they're not free within there's no circumstances. They just don't acknowledge the servitude of the circumstance. They don't, Zen masters don't go around saying, well, I have no choice.
Yeah, but see, I have a lot of problems with this thing that you're doing. I agree that there are different perspectives as to what we the way there are different perspectives in how we can see things, right? I was reading a book that was explaining why the concept of time is not necessary to create a fully functional model of physics. And one of the things it was talking about that was very interesting was about the arrow of time, how it's hard to argue that with time things don't follow this pattern of, you know, becoming more disorganized. Like, people get older instead of getting younger. Like there's no way around that, right? And the argument the guy was making in the book was, well, you're only saying that because you're looking at a perspective of the things that matter to you. But if you were to zoom in into existence and just, see atoms bouncing around, then, atoms can go whatever way, and it doesn't matter. It's just a matter of the focus of the lens, right? And yeah, I mean, yeah, that makes sense. But if we're talking about what the structure of reality is, then yeah, sure, let's go with that. But if we're talking about our experience, we are never experiencing the other thing.
Right? There isn't the other thing though. See, that's the mistake, right? The idea that you get older, right? That's a time thing that you consider to be an immutable circumstance. Yeah. But I don't acknowledge that there is a you to get older. That is, you're just a collection of appetites. And if any of those appetites change, you're now a different collection of appetites. And there's no necessary connection between those two collections of appetites. You say, well, yesterday I liked it and today I didn't. But I say, yesterday you were person A and today you're person B. You say that there is a connection there. You draw that connection, but I don't think that's necessarily true. right? And it's very evident with children who year after year just become different people. I got into an argument with a kid the other day about how, a picture of them 10 years ago or something is them, or is it? Because they don't remember that person. They can't manifest that person. They don't have anything in common with that person. And then the argument degenerated into, what's the difference between you at 5, you at 10, you at 15, and you at 20? If we put those 4 people in a room, are they going to inherently recognize each other? Like if they don't decode the facial features into familiarity, do they think they're the same person? And they absolutely do not think they're the same person. So the idea that you get older is, really your perception of a biological process of degradation. It's not actually you getting older, right?
Well, yeah, but there is a process of degradation.
Right.
Right.
So there's also erosion and thermoses falling off tables. The connection between the physics of change and the identity, identity and circumstance is non-existent. There's nothing there. You're like, well, we can't disregard physics. Well, I mean, physics works different ways, different places. So we don't really even have to disregard it because, it's not consistent. But the bigger problem is that using perception to say that circumstance is ironclad doesn't make any sense. Circumstance isn't ironclad. It's just a bag of toys, and you could take out one or you could take out a different one. You could be the same person today as you were yesterday, or you can not be a person at all. I mean, it's a totally random game, and people just pick a side and then they say their side's true for sure. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, why? Okay, let's even rewind. Why does Bai Zhang tell the fox story? It's obviously a fake story. Nobody takes the story seriously. In the story, nobody takes the story seriously, right? In the case, which is a historical record of Bai Zhang telling this story, nobody in the case takes the story he's telling seriously. And at the end, a Zen master who's a student in the audience gets up and slaps him for telling the story. But at the same time, this case is a huge problem for people for 1,000 years. Why would that possibly be true? Why is this case so hard for so many people, right? Why? Is it the magical thinking in terms of the curse? Is it the fact that he's a fox and he appears as a Jedi spirit? Is it the fact that any of these things? And I think no, all that stuff is just goofy and entertaining. The real problem is the idea that we are bound by causality. That is like having Buddha nature, an intrinsically real thing to people, and they cannot consider any alternative.
Wait, an alternative to what?
They can't consider any alternative to the fact that causality is the determinant of their lives, right? You're like, I'm really skeptical about all the things that Yuke is saying, and you're not the only one. Everybody is upset about this case because they just can't accept the fact that there's no such thing as causality, right? But that's an idea. Well, it's a true idea, but no, ideas aren't true. They're just ways of describing certain sets of circumstances, and there's other ways of describing them. I mean, it's a problem, but it's not a problem for Zen masters. They're laughing about this because they know this is just a temporary expedient explanation for a temporary expedient thing. Identity, temporary expedient thing.